If someone were to ask me if you could go back to 2007, would you? Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, and some of you who are already subscribed probably remember my channel under the name Melly3576. I have decided to record and upload content, so I changed the name. But most of you will remember me from a slideshow that I did 10 years ago. That slideshow featured my friends that I made on a parenting site, and we had all been through the loss of one or more babies, and that video was in memory of them. One thing that video didn't show was how we all became angel moms and dads. So this video is going to be my story. It is likely going to be very emotional, and it's not something that I've really talked about out loud a lot. I've told my story like in text format in the past, but out loud I've never really gone into great detail. I've told, you know, people basically what happened, but no details, and the details are what really make it hard for me. I also want to include content like pictures. So this is what I'm going to do as far as pictures of my daughters. I am going to put the pictures at the end of the video. That way, if it's something you're not comfortable seeing, then you don't have to continue to watch, because I know not everybody is, and that's okay. So I will get right into the video and share my story, and bear with me if I get choked up or if I cry. I don't know how I'm going to react, because honestly I'm kind of tired, so I may be more weepy than normal, or I don't know. We'll see. Well, wish me luck. In October of 2006, I found out that I was pregnant. Me and my husband had been together for about 1.5 years, and we had been trying pretty much that whole time. And it just wasn't happening for us. So when it did happen, it was completely shocking. Best way to put it. So go to my doctor. Everything is kind of like up in the air at that appointment. They didn't see anything, but they weren't sure how far along I was because they couldn't see anything. They didn't know if maybe I had miscarried or if something just hadn't shown up yet. So they were like, come back in 4 weeks and we will check again. So go back in 4 weeks. Everything looks perfect. So time goes by, go to another appointment, and they set me up with the hospital to do the anatomy scan. The anatomy scan was scheduled for January 8th. On January 6th, I started having really bad pains, and it was like I said, it was really bad, but it wasn't what we would consider contractions to feel like when you're newly pregnant and it's your first pregnancy and you see TV and it's one way. So I didn't think anything of it. January 7th, I woke up and I felt nauseous, so I ran to the bathroom, squatted down, and when I dry heaved, my water broke. I started screaming, and my husband, I believe, called 911, and they came and got me, and they took me to the hospital. But it wasn't the hospital I wanted, because the hospital I wanted was on standby. So I got to the hospital and they put me in the waiting room. My water had broken and they put me in the waiting room. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I couldn't stay there, and that it was completely packed. I couldn't stay there knowing my water had broken and I'm sitting around all these people trying to keep it together. So I was like, okay, your car's too low, let's wait until Tara gets here. Tara's my best friend, one of my best friends. And I had called her to come up there. So when she got there, I got in the car and we drove to the hospital I wanted to go to. And when we got there, all I said was my water broke, and they took me right back. And I often wonder if that time they wasted by putting me in the waiting room made a difference. So they get me in a room after they ask about my due date and everything, and they're like, okay, we need to do an ultrasound. So they had to cath me. They took me to ultrasound and my baby was fine. She was moving and she was fine. So eventually they got me up to labor and delivery, and I remember the nurse going, do you have fibroids? And I'm like, no. So she checks me again and she's like, I feel your baby's toes. And at that moment I knew that was it. I was having her and she was just too little to make it. I pretty much knew at that moment. So they get put me up to Pitocin, and by the time I had my baby girl, all my closest friends were that live in town were in the room along the wall, just there to support us. And I had to get the placenta out, so they kept me on the Pitocin, and they dragged me up so much that I held my baby, but I didn't hold her very long, and she was so tiny. She was 10 ounces and 10 inches. So I didn't hold her very long, and then I finally passed everything else and everybody said goodbye. And my husband, he has a hard time with hospitals, and so that night my best friend stayed with me, and I had a really, really bad headache. So the next day I woke up and I still had the headache, and I'm like, what's going on, you know? So I'm coping the best I can. I have a headache. I've decided my daughter's name is going to be Heavenly, but they tell me that before 20 weeks is still considered a miscarriage, even if it's 19 weeks. And it, you know, being so close to 20 weeks, it's still a miscarriage. So they don't recommend a funeral, so I didn't have one. So I go home and weeks go by and I'm still grieving, but I still have a headache and I can't get rid of this headache. And then I start getting double vision. So I go to the eye doctor and they're like, your optic nerves are swollen. We need you to go to this specialist. So I went to another eye specialist and they took pictures of my optic nerves and they were of course swollen. Well, they sent me to a neurologist. I had CAT scans and MRIs done, and finally they decided that I had something called pseudotumor cerebri, which is basically translated to false tumors of the brain. And what was happening is my spinal fluid was not absorbing or draining, whatever it does, and it was just sitting on top of my brain, and that's why I had a headache. And then it started backing up into my optic nerves, which was why they were swollen. And because they were swollen, they were folding my retina, which was causing the double vision. So I had a spinal tap done for that. And finally I have relief. They put me on diuretic and I finally get to kind of grieve more. But at the same time, in my mind, I'm like, okay, my doctor said it was probably a fluke. I could try again in 3 months. Let's get pregnant again. Gave myself no time. So, meanwhile, April comes and we're about to go into May. It was like the last week of April. I believe it was the 29th. Sorry to my cousins if I got that wrong, but my Uncle Bubba died. So it was like another blow. So now I'm grieving my firstborn baby girl, and I'm grieving my uncle. I'm finally over the headache and everything, so that's good. But I'm like, something's gotta give. So we get to May. It was like May, around May 20th, 25th, something like that. I find out I'm pregnant. And I'm happy, but I'm terrified. Because for all I know, everything could go wrong again, you know? So I go to the doctor, everything looks good. We get to the anatomy scan and they're like, your daughter looks like she has a congenital heart defect. I'm like thinking, of course. because that's just how my life goes. So they set me up with an echo for October 4th. On October 3rd, I start having these pains by it was my right thigh. But it's in my stomach. But it's only like a spot like this big. So I'm like, what is this? It can't be contractions. But with everything that happened last time, I went ahead and went to the hospital. They hooked me up to monitors, nothing's coming up. So they then decide to check me because I'm still having these pains. And the nurse checks me and she's like, I can't feel your cervix, it's too high. And I'm like, okay. So she tries again and she feels something. And she's like, the reason I can't feel your cervix is because you're completely dilated. At this point, I'm only 22 weeks and 5 days. And I'm like, what? And what she was feeling was my bag of water bulging. And they tried to stop the contractions because even though they weren't registering and they were only in that spot, that's what they were. And nothing would stop them. So they were like, there's nothing we can do. You're gonna have to have a baby. So I was like, why, you know? Nothing I can do about it. So they break my water. And the pressure is gone and my contractions stop. But it's too late. They've already broke my water and it's just too late. So they have to hook me up to Pitocin. And then I end up having my second little girl. We named her after my mom. My mom asked us to. And I was fine with that. So we named her Ginger Lee. She was 1 pound, 6 ounces. And she was 11.5 inches. It just felt like a nightmare. I don't understand how so much bad can happen in 1 year. If someone were to ask me if you could go back to 2007, would you? That would be the hardest question to answer for me. Because I don't ever want to feel that freshness of that pain again, but I would love to hold my babies again. I don't know, it was just a year I would never wish on anyone. But I can't complain too much because my life has turned out pretty good. I'm not rich in money, but I'm rich in other ways. I now have not 1, not 2, but 3 kids. And they drive me crazy, but at the same time they're amazing and I don't know what I would do without them. My oldest has ADHD and my youngest is somewhere on the autism spectrum. We're still waiting for them to do an evaluation on him, so I'm not sure exactly on all that yet. But as much as it still hurts to think about my other daughters, I'm lucky. There are so many people out there that never get pregnant. Or if they do, they never stay pregnant. So I'm grateful, very grateful. I will share the pictures of my girls at the end of this, after the outro. So do not feel like you have to look at them. I know it's hard, especially hard for some of you going through a loss already. But it happens, and we should be able to talk about it, even if it's sad, if it brings up old hurt. It's important to talk about it. So yeah, I will add an outro to this, but I'm going to get myself together first and then do it, so I'm not like all this. But yeah, that's pretty much how my journey to parenthood, how it started. It started out tragically, but sometimes that's just the way it goes. I'm back. I'm put together now. I'm not falling to pieces, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my video and listen to my story. My next video, I plan on going into a little bit more as to why I lost my first two and how we prevented it for my future pregnancies. Sometimes it just feels nice to let it all out, get a good cry in, and help other people understand things, or help them even grieve, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are going through losses of their own, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to share my story. So I hope that this reaches someone and helps someone feel less alone, because not everybody has the support system that I had, and it's nice to know that other people know how you feel. In the future, I plan on going over things with my other kids. My oldest, she will be 9 soon, and she has been begging to either start her own channel or do a video with me. I'm not letting her start her own channel right now. I feel like she's too young, but I'm more than fine with her being on my channel, so I'll have to do something fun with her. So if you're interested in seeing more of my family and what goes on in my happy life, then please hit the subscribe button down below, hit the bell icon so you will be notified every time I upload new content, and please leave now if you don't want to see pictures of my babies. Like I said, not everyone is comfortable, and that's fine, but I am going to share them, so I will have a little bit of a delay, but they will be at the end of this. So bye.